Welcome to Who We Are and What We Need. I'm your host, Quiring. I'm a licensed mental health counselor and an advocate for needs-honoring, needs-based society. In this podcast, we talk about how to trust and care for yourself as a person who cares and feels deeply, how to understand the inner physics of human nature and our place in the world where we can flow and live harmoniously, how to support each other, thrive, and collectively challenge worldviews and systems that feed off of and perpetuate harm. In this podcast, we gently blow away the layers of noise, chaos, and reactivity so we can get to who we truly are and what we need. Thanks for joining me. I'm so glad you're here.
Hello, lovely listeners. I'm so happy to be here with you today. I will often have guests on this podcast, but today it's just me. And I want to start off this podcast by setting the scene. I've been listening to the audiobook of Rest is Resistance by Tricia Hersey, and am reminded of how rest is part of our reclamation. It's part of our resistance work. It's part of how we radically care for ourselves and resist the unreasonable expectations of our productivity culture. We get to take back our autonomy and our bodies. We get to nourish ourselves, listen to ourselves when they need rest, when they need play, when they need hard work. We get to listen from inside, not just the constant pressures and expectations from outside. And I like how Tricia Hersey brings this into a resistance framework, that there are ways to do this even in the midst of intense financial pressure from capitalism, that we don't have to buy into the scarcity that's given to us, that we can find other ways of being, even by reclaiming a few moments for ourselves, a few moments to just be and rest. Part of my gifting and calling in the world is to bring space and clarity and frameworks for internal rest. And so I'm going to especially be speaking to that, as well as how we can expand that rest and that wholeness and integration and nourishment into our communities and into our world as well. And I am really encouraged, despite all of the destruction and polarization around us, that there is so much organic life and hope springing up as well. So much clarity, even in the midst of all the fake news. And I think that one of the reasons for the spiraling and the chaos that we are seeing and experiencing, especially anytime we listen to the news, is because there is so much grassroots change and calls for more life-giving ways of being and relating to ourselves and to each other and to this earth. And anytime there is this call for truth and reconciliation and restitution and healing and transformation, there is also going to be people and energy and resistance to that, out of fear, mostly, that is transformed into a fight trauma response, into anger, into defensiveness, even into annihilation energy, in this attempt to grasp and hold on to the ways they've known to have control and certainty and power, to dig even deeper down into the ways that our world has been ordered for so long, on colonial, imperial, patriarchal, extractionist, dominion ways of being. And as there's this call for renewal and change that we get to embody as part of our resistance, there's also a reaction to it. And there is always some chaos, change as things shift. And it gives me hope to think about this idea of order that doesn't work anymore to disorder to reorder. And anytime there are spaces and calls to reorder into ways that are more life-giving for everyone, that are more collective, that are more reciprocal, that are built on consent and mutuality rather than authority and good or bad binaries, there's going to be a big shift. Some people call this shift moving from the age of Pisces to the age of Aquarius. Some people call it the return of the divine feminine. There are so many different ways to understand this shift and this huge transition we're in. But just because there's chaos doesn't mean there's not hope. It doesn't mean there's not frameworks for healing and change, and that in the midst of our making sense of this and in trying to thrive and finding ways to express activism, I think it's really important to understand that part of our activism is not falling into white supremacy ways of doing that. It's not about meeting someone else's expectations of what that looks like. It's not about working yourself to death, but for a different cause or different values than before. It's not about being right or being enough of this or that. It's about listening to our bodies. It's about listening to the earth. It's about listening to each other with mindful compassion to really understand who we are and what we need. Because all human thoughts, feelings, behaviors have a function. They are usually expressing a deep human need that we have. And we'll be talking more about those in different episodes. Just to mention a few, we have attachment needs. We have needs for belonging, for connection. We have needs for feeling competent. We have needs for enjoying play. We have needs for rest. We have needs for autonomy and individuation. We have needs for creativity and play. We have needs for food and sustenance, for caring for our bodies through strengthening them, through rest, through nourishing them. And our way forward is to deeply listen and honor those needs and recognize that when that's hard to do, it's because of all these external burdens and pressures that then have become internal burdens and pressures. You can call that trauma. You can call that stress. You can call that nervous system activation or shutdown. I'll be talking through different ways of seeing and understanding this. One of the other things that gives me hope is that there are so many different ways to understand what is happening to us, to understand who we are and what we need. And they all speak to a similar thing from slightly different perspectives and nuances, which is another way to know that something is deep and true and long-lasting. We don't have to be confused or blown away by all of the swirling commentaries and whether something is true or fake news. If we're living deep in our bodies and we're connected to ourselves and to the world and our own inner knowing that is connected to this long-standing knowing that we have collectively, it's not as easy to be fooled or confused or swept away. So I want to be part of that exploration with you, part of that both grounding and flexibility, strength and suppleness, nourishment and strength. I look forward to our next conversation. Signing off, this is Catherine Quiring.
Thank you for being a part of our collective care and meaning making on who we are and what we need. Leave a review, subscribe, and follow us on social at Catherine Quiring and at Who We Are Pod. This is your host, Catherine Quiring, signing off. See you again soon.